By the time we realized, and our wives were saying, get your will together. It's like, what? you want the will to be together? It was Kidnap and Ransom. With the point of his gun, he's saying, take out to a person. I am so sorry. We are not all terrorists. The barrel was on the truck, and now it's lowering on us as we're hearing Passport American. Yes. There's so many things that happened prior to that, but that's important, because in order to get out the door, it was 8 months. It wasn't like flying to London or flying to Munich, anywhere. It was.
What does it mean, preparation itself? What does it mean, the 8 months?
The 8 months is, well, of course, 8 months is a period of time from the conception of the idea that we were going to go to the Middle East. We were going to follow T.E. Lawrence's path from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, along the Hejaz, which is along the Red Sea, and follow the path and the different events that took place during the First World War with the Arab Revolt, the Arabs and the British fighting against the Turks and the French to overthrow the Ottoman Empire. And of course, there's an incredible war going on. This is the sideshow. The real show was France and Germany, and France just getting beaten up horribly by the Germans, you know. And so that's it was that, and then each day we realized we wanted to be physically fit, and we wanted to take a backpack. We had basic ideas, but the actual understanding of we really are going into a conflict area. Americans were not going into Saudi Arabia in 2005, 2006. It just was not happening, because the fallout from 9/11 was very rich in the air. There was a war going on, retaliation in different parts of the Middle East. And so there was like peeling back an onion. There was a layer, and then when we got to another layer, and the layers included, what are we going to wear? What kind of equipment are we going to take? Do we need to learn anything new? Well, we certainly did. By the time we realized, and our wives were saying, get your will together. It's like, what? you want the will to be together?
You want the money, huh? You want the
money. Yes, we were adults, but had never thought, really, and it's that way. Maybe it's more prevalent today that people have wills early on, but that was important. And then discovering, well, excuse me, if we have to have a will, then it might be a good idea to have insurance. And what kind of insurance would we need? What is that all about? And so we realized we're going to need an international insurance carrier. And we were told, check out Ackerman, because they deal with big businesses, and they deal with, security protocols. And we're going, security protocols? Well, we don't need that. And yes, we did. We certainly did.
So it was underappreciation at its best. Everything was undermined. Like you thought, okay, it cannot be so complicated. But the thing which is on my mind since you start telling the story. So we talk about a time and a situation when you didn't have Booking.com, Airbnb, telephone, roaming for telephone. How was this planning? What was your safety scenario? Like you said, okay, you had insurance, you had your wheels done, which I can understand. But what was the fallback scenario? Or there was no fallback?
Well, to get the insurance, we were advised that they would not give us insurance unless we were trained for conflict and risk assessment management.
Makes sense.
And they recommended, they had a partner at their firm that his name is Jamie Lothar Pinkerton. He was a partner at the time. He had been appointed by the Queen of England to the care of Prince Harry and Prince William. He was a private secretary, and he had honors. He was in SAS Major, retired, Irish Guard, and he had specialties, but a lot of it was checkpoints. It was kidnap and ransom. Now, when you go through Special Forces training, this is all, I just had a conversation the other day with a Green Beret, retired. And he said, well, we did that. It was like nothing. But as a civilian, when you really are dealing with the concept of kidnap and ransom, it starts bringing in the reality and the complexity of what you're doing. And when you sit there and you are instructed on how to behave as an actor, in my mind, it's like being an actor. I'm always playing the part before the part is on the stage or in front of the film cameras. And so in the same with Jamie, I'm envisioning myself, on the floor, in the corner, and behaving the way Jamie instructed us to behave, and being aware of the 1, 2, 3 of situational awareness constantly. And so having that go through our mind and then realizing, well, how are we really going to get around? How are we going to do this? We can't actually do it on camels. We don't have that time. Or the back to deal with it. And so, and what do we need to do to get in shape? Well, we're going to take one knapsack each, a ruck each. We decide, and what is it going to be? And this is 2005, 2006. And so it's figuring out communications, you said. We're dealing with Motorola Razrs, flip tops, back then. Very cool stuff.
Exactly. But for that time, very cool stuff. When you had the Razr, that was the deal.
Yeah, I mean, it was thin. You could put it inside your jacket. No one would know you had any. And, it was just, and then when they came out with headphones, I mean, you go to men's room and you hear guys standing, doing their business, talking. You go, what's going on? And the guy's, and he's on his
me?
Right. And he's on headphones. So all this stuff was new. And so we ended up getting a satellite phone that was dedicated to us, so that we always had that. And, it's like the early phones in cars. I mean, it was like a piece of machinery. It was
like it was a phone and a weapon. A phone and a weapon.
It was, a lot. And then, because we wouldn't have cell service, and then we realized we'll just get, they're, what do they call it? The disposable phones. But we would the first time we ran up a bill, it was an $1,100 bill.
Wow.
Using my phone going to the Middle East. Yeah. And we figured that one out. Yeah, we were a business and we had raised money. We're paid for it, but still it's like, that's a waste. How do you bring that down? And so we wanted to be able to deliver dispatches wherever we were. Every day, a comment, an observation. And Miles did his and I did mine. And then we needed a way to upload it in the desert. And so we found the equipment to do this. Let me just bounce back to the kidnap and ransom. What's the fallback? A freaking lot of insurance. No,
so
it's a very simple insurance line. It was a very big bill.
So it was that was the only thing that made the phone bill look small.
Oh, yes. Yes. And how would we notify, or how would we let the world know that we were in mortal danger? Well, in 2005, they released the 406 megahertz communications. It was available to nautical people, but not to civilians, and to the military. It was still high level. Well, we
Mhm.
got a personal locator beacon, and I've kept this because I've shown it. This is what we got in 2005. It's an ACR personal locator beacon that you flip out. It has an antenna. You open it up and you double hit, and it sends a signal to satellites overhead. And back then, the satellites would circle around, the Earth, however it works, periodically. And so you would tie in to satellites that were tied into different countries. But this frequency through this company would relay this message, which is a mortal danger message, that would trip its way back to the United States. It would go to one person, would be alerted, and they were able to cut through all the calls to reach this one person because it was an emergency. And
Mhm.
and this does not get tripped unless it's serious.
Understood.
And
So basically, that was the fallback then.
the fallback was that, and then in the plan, in the instructions, they could send out a group, let's say, that would come after us to
Okay.
assist. Private.
And how did you make your daily notes? Was it local there, or it was also sent?
We bought the brand new, back then, was the Panasonic Toughbook. And
Toughbook. I never heard about it.
the Toughbook was like a little mini suitcase. And it was the military
State-of-the-art
started
technology.
state of the art. It was a mini suitcase, and you open that thing up, you could drop this 10 feet in the air, drop it into the sand, and you're good. It was okay. And we said, that's great, but how do we charge it? So we found the latest solar panel, which was literally like a piece of paper, 4 pieces of paper folded out, and you could roll it. And it had the ability, it was solar powered, and the connections to give you the juice you needed for the laptop and for phones.
Oh man. Oh, like, so first of all, I just googled the Panasonic Toughbook. I didn't even know that this exists. Amazing.
It was phenomenal. I mean,
Absolutely
absolutely
amazing.
phenomenal. So we could do, internet and all this stuff was still fairly new. They say, okay, now we're in the desert. We just talked about, watching, camels, riding camels. We rode through here to here. We did 50 clicks, blah, blah, blah. The temperature, 115 degrees, the sun intense, no shade, getting blah, all the things that we experienced. But how do we upload it? There's
Mhm.
no Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is like, that's in the future.
Yeah.
And so
Like-
go ahead.
Like you had, but it was just so less, and so it was not spread in like in especially in those areas, and especially in a conflict area.
Oh,
So I think that-
in like Saudi Arabia, exactly. We found, so we found a satellite network, and that was called BGAN. You could look that up as well, Paul. BGAN, BEGAN is the acronym for Broadband Global Access Network. They don't make anything like that. I mean, we have GPS. We have so many different things.
It's Broadband Global Area Network. Wow. Man, I'm
Yes.
passionate about internet, and I'm an IT guy in my base. I never heard about this. You you open a different world for me.
This is primitive. This is 20 years ago. And so we had a BGAN. Now, when you look at that, it looks like it's a laptop. It's cream
Yeah.
colored, and you open it up and there's nothing inside. That scared people.
Ooh, true.
That became an issue at the border crossing into Israel. The
Wow.
the associate there said, opened it up. He said, "What is this? What is this?" We said, "It's broadband global access network. It's a connection to the internet through satellite." And she's just like, she's putting together, who are you? Because these were all new. Showing, when I showed this, so what is this? It says 406 megahertz. What? I said, it's a
So you raise
PLB, personal locator beacon.
you raise exclamation mark after exclamation mark at every border cross, every checkpoint cross, everything.
Absolutely.
Oh my
With
God.
the equipment, but you see, this is still was all part of, I'm in the planning stage. I'm not even in the journey yet, excepting a little anecdote there. It was figuring out what it is we need. Can we carry all this in your pack and my pack? And so it's, what kind of sleeping bag do we want to have? How big is it going to be when it really is condensed? Well, it was like a mini soccer ball, a mini football, soccer football. And let's see, the other thing that I had was a watch. Suunto had just come out with a watch called X9i. You can look that up. And it was back in 2005. And the company was just, now they do watches and they have GPSs. But this watch, I could be anywhere in the world and triangulate to see where I am. And it would connect with satellites.
Crazy. So I could say the first smartwatch, right?
It's very close. Yeah, exactly. We weren't able to
Crazy.
type anything in, but we could get our location, and we would find out what's going on over our head. Now, the interesting thing is, and I talked with some people here that were, what would you call them? Well, people that do maps and
Cartographs.
it's cartographers, right?
Exactly.
But they were also doing a course on GPS, how to work with different GPS systems. And it was in the early stages. So it was probably in like 2010. And I said, this watch that I had on, I can triangulate with satellites and find out where I am and so forth. And I said, in the desert, it would take like 90 seconds for it to operate, to connect with whatever satellites are going overhead, right? When I was in Amman, Jordan, on the Acropolis.
I sorry, I'm interrupting you for a second. I've just found a model of X9i, which is absolutely impressive. Absolutely impressive.
Yep, that's the whole kit.
Crazy. It was like the price. The new price was at least 600 euros, as far as I see on this box. It's something I just found. It's for sale.
Is that right? Because that's exactly what I had right there.
That's still 258 euros, man.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Well, when you are wearing that watch, you've got a satellite phone, you've got the Toughbook, you've got a personal locator beacon that you can just go, throw it, and, the troops come in. And an ultralight sleeping bag. I mean, it's just, you feel there's a level of protection, but it was such a different kind of feeling because people didn't have that then.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know?
Absolutely.
So we
And
felt empowered. Is my
exactly
point.
Empowered, and it made you somehow independent because you didn't have
Absolutely.
the stress of you didn't have the stress. I have to rely on someone to send my location. I have to rely
Right.
on someone for the next, I don't know, 6 weeks or 5
Right.
weeks or so on. I can do that every day, and that's amazing. That's just amazing, I have to say.
So we had these things, and then we had Jamie, and we told Jamie we're not going to register with the embassies, with the governments. We really want to go under the wire. These are the pieces that we've identified. He was impressed with that. He was not impressed that we weren't going to register the embassies. He said the best thing for you to do is to fly into each country. It's the easiest way to get through immigration. And we said, other than the first one, flying, no. We want to cross the borders on foot or close to it. I mean, it might be a car, but we don't know the person. We are doing it to see what it's like for the people, the local people, or people going from one country to the other, from Saudi into Jordan. And there was no one going from Saudi into Jordan.
Honestly, I think it's the same today. And
the crossing at Hakel, we were directed. The guy couldn't speak English, to unload our backpack on old they're like parachute tables, like a 30-foot long table that's about 30 inches wide. And he said, and with the point of his gun, he's saying, take out. And everything had to be set out so they could see what it was. And if they're picking things up and it's going, and trying to explain as best we can. And then most people thought we were consultants. Most people thought we were Blackwater, Triple Canopy, Centurion, hired hands, security, ex-special forces, hired security. And we said, la, entertainment. And they go, what? Entertainment, la, 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 la. Oh, I don't know if they understood or not, but we got through. And the Jamie's instructions, having the insurance, it's having the map. Knowing we're in Jeddah, we've got to get to Yambo, we got to get to Weja, we've got to get to Aqaba. And from, Aqaba, we want to see the fort where Lawrence and there was the first win in that war, was the taking of the fort in Aqaba, which is at the head of the Gulf of Aqaba. It's the head of the Red Sea. And then you go into the Gulf of Aqaba, and it runs along, still along the Hejaz, along the Saudi border into Jordan. And Aqaba's it. Hakel's just a few clicks down south, which is the crossing. And the crossing was not in a city. It was in a shed. It was more than a shed, but the outside had the tin roofs that were not nailed down. The wind was just and they were just slamming over your head, and you're looking at the Red Sea just down the hill right there. And there's sparrows flying around, and there's nothing. There's a road that leads to it. There's a gate, you come in, and there was a guy with his shirt half out of his trousers. It wasn't, a formal crossing, but it was a crossing. And inside there was an officer that stamped our passports.
But besides the crossing, you had a lot of checkpoints, right?
Correct. Yes, 39.
Were they military checkpoints?
All of them are military checkpoints. And if they're
what's
not a military checkpoint, you got to get out of there. That was Jamie's instructions. He
because
said,
it was
if
illegal.
you're pulling up, correct, it's something else. If you're pulling up to, obviously, a checkpoint, there's usually a hut, or there's a truck, or there's usually a structure. And the individuals are not in a uniform of some sort. And they're holding assault rifles.
Run.
Back up. And so you approach each one gently. And each one is different.
What stands out from the checkpoints? That what was there one that generally scared you?
There was one where it was more intense, but you said what stands out, what stood out the most, and in this journey was when people saw an American passport. This is my new passport. But when you hand over this blue passport, United States of America, they are like, almost like, careful with it. Oh, America. Yes. Why you here? To see with our own eyes. Ah. And they literally say, you're welcome. This is Saudi. And first we thought, you're welcome. They're saying, oh, you're welcome. The tone on it was, we didn't know if it was because we said thank you and they said, you're welcome, or welcome into the country, or what it was. And right up to His Royal Highness Prince Khalid, it was a surprise that Americans were there, 2006, spring, because the relationships between the United States and Saudi and the Middle East was, we were at war.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly there's two civilians coming through. And hand on heart, I am so sorry about the 9/11.
Wow.
To a person, I am so sorry. We are not all terrorists. And that line was said by His Royal Highness Prince Khalid bin Faisal after we had sat for an hour in his majlis with all of these sheikhs from the desert, camel owners, the eyes of the desert, and they're relaying to their prince, and he's the prince of the province of Asir, which is the lowest, it's like a state, the province, and leaving that, we were invited in to do this, to sit there. And it was through, through our handler, not our handler, but someone that we had met that said, oh, I'd like you to come. We'll let him know and see if he will allow you to sit in. We didn't understand a word because it's all in Arabic. But we did look across from us and saw all these men that looked like they were from central casting for a biblical movie. They were in camel's hair, and they had beards, and they had, hats and staffs and big wide belts around big girths. And they sat with sandals and their feet square on the ground, and they were, red henna-colored beards. They all looked like they were out of the Bible, like Moses and and they were legit. And they're considered the wealthy Bedouins are the camel owners. And they were having audience that they do once a month with His Royal Highness. Afterwards, and it's at night. Afterwards, and we step out, and it's misty, and it's dark, and we see the prince is coming our way. He's on his way to his quarters, to his palace. And he stops. And he says hello to us. It is good to see you. please join me for dinner. You will see that we are not all terrorists. And we're
Did,
like our mouths open, like,
did you have the feeling somehow that they were trying to excuse themselves?
no, with excuse, there was contrition. It was 9/11. Nothing like that had ever been done to the United
Correct.
States on our territory. Now,
Correct.
people from Ukraine, people from Germany, from France, they've been bombed. London, bombed. We've never experienced anything like that. And somehow it was unbelievable. And because there were so many terrorists that were actually Saudi, everybody felt, and the perception was that America hates Saudi Arabia. And so that was very big as a surprise in terms of a checkpoint, in terms of danger or sensing the extremity of the situation was actually in Jordan, which is, as Jamie said, Jamie categorized each place, state, each country that we were going to, just a generalization. If you get kidnapped in Saudi Arabia, that I'm not talking about royal family, I'm not talking politics. I'm talking if you get kidnapped. It is politics. But it's not from necessarily the royal family. It's terrorists. You will not you will not get out. That's their practice, the mindset. And again, he said, I'm not talking about the government, I'm talking about the peripheral people. Jordan, you'll love it. Make sure you go to here, go to Petra, go here, go to this place, and there's a wonderful coffee shop in Amman you must go to, because it's loaded with journalists, and it's where everybody goes, and it's very international. And he said, and Syria, it's becoming difficult. And indeed it was. We just got our visas. To get our visas was as intense as doing any of this research, and we did a lot of research, reading more about Lawrence and about the area. But it was the crossing, going to the Dead Sea from Amman. We had a driver that was from an organization that we actually identified in our fundraising that we were going to give money to this foundation. The foundation is out of New York City, and it's called Seeds of Peace. And it's where high school thought leaders, people 16, 17, 18 years old, Israeli and Palestinian, get together for the summer in Maine, United States. It's been going since 1993. In our book, we call it, the book is called A Line in the Sand. It's by Miles Spencer and Wells Jones. In our book, we call that organization, and the characters that come from it say that they were from Seeds of Hope. We didn't put Seeds of Peace in the book, but it's based on Seeds of Peace. In the book, it's Seeds of Hope. And so
I will link the book below, only for everyone to know that.
Oh, sure. And I hope you'll link Seeds of Peace as well, seedsofpeace.org, because those were the big lessons, was what we heard from these people. So we met the woman that was in charge of Seeds of Peace. Her husband, who created it, had passed on. And Janet, when she heard that we were going to follow T.E. Lawrence's path and go to the Middle East, she just was lit. And we said, we're raising money. We want to donate some money to you. And she said, would you like to meet some of the Seeds of Peace campers? They're a little older now, but we have a group in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. We have a group in Amman. We have a group in Israel. And she said, you can go by the offices, and we'll give advance notice to them that you're coming, and you will have an opportunity to speak with the campers to hear in their voice what they learned at the camp. And so that was wonderful. And when we were in Amman, I don't recall the specific people's names, but they said, "You want to go to the Dead Sea?" We said, "Yes, it's Easter. We want to go to the Dead Sea." And they said, "Well, we have a driver that will drive you." Said, "Thank you. That's great." And so the driver, Mahmoud, took us, and we came to we left Amman, and we came to the area where along the Dead Sea, the road runs north and south, just like the Dead Sea. And you have Amman on one side and you have Israel on the other side. And you can see one side to the other. And so we pull up to a checkpoint that's on this road that giving us access to go south to get to where we wanted to go. A truck was in front of us. And we hear the usual passports, and watching, and whatnot. And they say, "American." "Yes. Yes." And they said, "Very good. Hand it back. You can go." The truck pulls out. That was in front of us. That's right. The sequence of events is that before we're asked for the passports, the truck pulls out. While we're being asked for the passport, the truck makes its turn, and it reveals a tank that has camouflage on it. The barrel was on the truck, and now it's lowering on us as we're hearing "Passports American." "Yes." And I'm saying, did you see that? To Miles, who's in the back seat. He goes, "Yes." The intensity of that was really amazing. I've seen all kinds of military things, but to be on a road in a little car and to see a barrel, we were half the size of that thing. It was just a little car. Local car. And that barrel aiming right on us and stopping. And even when it stopped, you see it kind of jiggle a little bit.
Was that the moment when you thought, okay, this is the end?
No, it's just, I couldn't imagine we would have to do something, but it was a very powerful message.
Mm-hmm.
And Mahmoud pulled ahead, hand me both passports, and he pulled ahead, and I thought, what's wrong with him? It was just like, and we took the left in front of the tank. I said, "Mahmoud, what's with the tank?" And he just, with his arm, went, "Them!" He was pointing to Israel. I said, "Them, Israel." And I said, "Just don't say anything." I looked at him. He was white with rage. He was just, it turns out he's Palestinian. And he was working like a volunteer. Maybe he picked up a little money driving people around for the Seeds of Peace group. And so feeling that anger, and really it was hatred. And that's, jumping to October 7th or October
7th.
Yeah. And I was going to say the day Miles and I talked, 2023, Miles and I got on the phone with you immediately. And it's like, what has this become? The anger has turned to hatred. And it's on a mass scale that people are doing things that are so heinous. I'm a producer of events. I've been a producer. I've had 5,000 people in the field. That's not a lot, but it's some, for a concert. The thought of all of this and seeing all my people at the concert and the reasons they were there, or to imagine a couple thousand, it's just horrific.
Absolutely.
what we say is, why? What drives an individual? When we fight in school or something, or someone shoves us, we shove them back, or, we hit them and we get hit, we hit them back and it's over. You go, he's a jerk. You're a jerk. Okay, right. But when it gets to that level, and then the retaliation continues and magnifies it's removing a people.
But it's what we see in the whole world. Well, it's not something that is happening only there.
It's not
It's what we
exactly.
It's what we see everywhere. It's like we are fighting against each other for fights that are not ours. So we are
Yes.
fighting against each other because, I don't know, I'm blue and you're red, or the other way around. I'm fighting against you because you are on the right, I'm on the left. It doesn't matter, but I'm fighting against each other. I think in the history of humankind, that's at least my opinion, but maybe I'm too subjective now because I lived
Not
this
at
period.
all.
I think there was not a period when neighbors were not talking to each other because they had different political views.
Well, it's
think
humanity.
families,
Yeah.
exactly, and I think the humanity is going away because the problem is that we are fighting political fights which are not ours. We are raged against each other. Is what's happening in the States, is what's happening. I'm talking about my case in Romania. It's exactly the same. It's hate which is broadcasting to all the social media, and this is what's happening. There is one view of this which I think it's critical to mention. Back then, when that was the case, the hate between Palestine and Israel was not spread through social media. Was only a local, like Mahmoud, the driver, was hating them, but he was not writing something on Twitter just because he felt like I want everyone to die on the other side, or I don't know. But the easiness with which we can hate each other online, it's becoming too accessible to everyone. And this is
thoughtless. It's thoughtless, though.
Exactly.
It's thoughtless.
And
do people know? Do people know that at one point in time there was an agreement between the Zionists, Chaim Weizmann, and Amir Faisal Hussein? Faisal Hussein, his brother, is in that family. The Hussein family has been the king of Jordan from the beginning. And Faisal himself was the first king of Iraq. They made an agreement that the Zionists could live in Israel, in this area. And Faisal, in the end, did put a codicil on it, and he said, "I agree to this as long as the British agree to the promises to the Arabs that they've made." Well, it was a time when Arab and Jew at the highest level were together in agreement. And then it just exploded.
What do you think?
From there.
I want to go a bit on this rant because I think, as a person who has been there and experienced the Middle East on a long trip, and see what the local behaviors are, what do you think would be the solution today?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. I don't have that. I don't have an opinion on that. One would think, 2 states, stop fighting, but I don't know.
Okay.
I just don't. I'm not equipped for that, and quite frankly, no one is. Clearly.
Absolutely. I think, like you said, I think the fair solution is the 2-state solution. If it's doable, I don't know. And like you said, we are not. I was just curious.
Right.
But
I don't jump in that way. I'll tell you why. Because if I did, I would have gone to the Middle East with, a different kind of intention. It's like to prove that I'm right about some opinion that I have. We didn't do that. We went to an adventure to understanding, which meant, what did that mean? Well, We don't want to stay in fancy hotels all the time. We don't want to fly jets from here to there. And because someone likes us, just take. No, go in and have don't have a view. Just be human, breathe, eat with people, listen, ask questions, observe their clothing. Abdulela, he's 16, 17 years old. Abdulela, your dad ever get mad at you? Yeah. Did he ever hit you? No. Why would he hit me? Well, he was mad at you. No. He's a Saudi kid. I said, well, what'd you do? He said, I set my grandmother's dining room table on fire. Abdullah. And he was kind of laughing. He says, I was playing with matches underneath the table. And they were all in the other room, and it caught, and things happened, and it really made a mess. And I said, and your dad, did he yell at you? My dad would never yell at me. Really? He didn't raise his voice? No. Well, how did you know he was mad? He said, there's a vein over his right eye that comes out when he's upset. And he made me read the Quran every night for 1 hour for 1 month. I said, well, probably know more about the Quran. He said, and he laughed. He goes, yes. He said, but no, we don't fight. People think we fight. No, we don't hit each other. Even in school, no one does that. And I said, well, that's not the school I went to.
The same for me.
It's like, I said my name with a Southern accent in 4th grade and got, I was brand new in the school, got downstairs in the playground, and someone pushed me really hard into the dirt because I had a different accent.
The thing is that when you are new in school, you get bitten because you have a hat, and you get bitten because you don't have a hat. So it's like... Ted, talking about going in, have you had any kind of prejudice going in with the Middle East that was debunked while you were there?
Well, no. I mean, we went to see with our own eyes, and there was a reason for going. I mean, the headlines in the papers, any paper on the Middle East, was just horrific. But I learned, by that time, in age and experience, I've worked with so many different people in producing. I've worked with different cultures. I've done events for different cultures, from prayer groups, African-American prayer groups. My wife was doing an event where we were the only light-colored skinned person, in the room, and it was a huge room. And before being in the room, it's working with different people of different backgrounds and cultures and countries. And I love that. And so going to the Middle East was something that I didn't know. I had Jewish friends growing up, but I only knew what I read. And I knew that T.E. Lawrence was a British citizen, and he, through his experiences as a young man, ended up, being a young protege at the museum, the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England, and they sent him on a archaeological dig, and he learned the language over a period of 3 different seasons. He learned the language. He loved the people. He felt like he had place, and he didn't try to change people. And that resonated with me about T.E. Lawrence. I say, he and I are alike. I don't want to change anyone. I want to know their best. And if I'm in charge of an event and bringing these people in, I say to people, I want your ideal. What do you mean? No one says that. Well, I want what you conceive. You've heard what we want to do. Now take this and let's just blow this out of the water. If it's too much money, if it's too much this, if it doesn't fit because something else over here, but let me hear the best. And you'll be influenced by, the sound man, by the lighting man, by the stage production, by the sets. It's all influences itself, but let's work on our highest level. And when I meet people, it's just, I want to know who they are. And it's not because, hey, okay, tell me. It's not with an American face. Like, hey, man, how you doing? What's happening, dude? It's like, that's fine for certain things, but it's seeing people where they are. And Jamie gave us the greatest word to cover all of it. He said, the one thing that I have found in all my work, there's one word and one behavior that crosses all cultures. I'm like, what's that? Graciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Gracious. You want to ask something of somebody, be gracious. You want to receive something, be gracious. There's no talking, just sit in grace and be alert. It's
a
not
universal language.
That's it. People say love, and right, but he said graciousness. And
How
so
long?
I didn't have prejudices.
That's
I mean, I'm sure I
really
did.
nice.
Maybe I did. Look, when I first found out how in order to use the bathroom facilities, and if there's no, it's like, where's the tissue paper, toilet paper? There's no toilet paper. There's a hose and water. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I didn't know that one. What? Is it just this one place? No, it's every place. And the customs are different. It's like, well, this is different. And you got to learn to, there's a lot of things you need to learn. And I see that as just chalking one up. Wow, I love that. That's great. That's different. Eating with your right hand. As a man, not crossing your legs, sitting in a chair. Simple as that. In Saudi Arabia, when you're amongst the Bedouins and stuff, it happened when we were at the Majlis. First of all, we're always, when we can relax, we're so tired. We've been on the go and being focused so much on each other, where we're going, making sure we don't go through the same door twice or the same door. I mean, just so many different things that became habit. But we were in the Majlis and it was so quiet and Miles was sitting to my left and he had his legs crossed. And I thought, Miles, don't fall asleep. Don't. I saw his head go like this. And I thought, oh, that's not good. And on my side was Osama. Osama's in our book. And Osama looks over at Miles and he says to me, hey, tell Miles to uncross his legs. I said, what? Tell Miles, uncross his legs. Okay. Miles, huh? Miles, uncross your legs. What? Uncross your legs. And you look across the other side with all these men. They're like 30 some. They were all over. They're all staring at us because who are these guys in Western clothing? And they're sitting with their legs spread apart, big, thick leather sandals, and they're like, beards, and they're like, and Miles uncrossed his legs. And later he said, Osama, is that, oh, no. Man does not cross his leg. Women maybe, but you don't see that anyway. So, but don't do that. And I was like, okay.
I know the scene from the book. It was nice. It's nice to describe in the book as well. By the way, I can only recommend the book. We didn't get there yet, but I can only recommend the book. The storytelling in it, it's impressive. It's really nice.
Oh, thank you.
I have to say it.
Thank you.
How long in days was the trip?
It was like 29 days.
29 days. Intensive.
It was
right?
a full month. Pardon?
Intensive, right?
It was 29 days of intensive. I've been asked what was the hardest part about doing this. And it was, in the end, by the time we were making our crossing into Israel, we were exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
We were really, really, we stood on that bus for that amount of time and not knowing what's going on, holding on to our gear, the smells, the perspiration, the windows on the bus couldn't come down. We're going to go across the King Hussein Allenby Bridge. And it was exhausting.
Hmm.
And I forgot your question.
No, that was the question. How many
Okay.
days? And I wanted to follow up on that because you finished the trip, you got home. Was that a period of silence, like a hangover from the intensity?
That's interesting. Well, I will say, and this is really may sound weird, it was another time that I actually got off the plane and kissed the ground, the United States ground. It was after doing the Sea Festival, which came later um, in Saudi Arabia, and that was very, very intense. It was, we were on to starting to write a book. There were so many things going on. It was wonderful to be home, and it was very different. We were living in Golden, Colorado in the Rocky Mountains, and it was great to be home. But I was on a whole different schedule, still getting up early, early in the morning and going to my office, which is a separate facility, the house. We were kind of on a hillside, a mountaintop. And I was able, and just, I was in communications with so many different people. And there was a continuation of the wrap up to the trip because we were also, the reason for going was working with a Broadway producer, theatrical
Hmm.
producer on a play. Back then we called it A Line in the Sand. And we had just picked up, she had negotiated for us, our executive producer, at our approval, a writer. And so we jumped in on that. And it wasn't long. I was on a plane to London, back in Colorado, but then right out the door again,
So
meeting this writer.
there was no break in between or after that.
No, no. And then immediately, because we met Osama, and Osama said that they want to do, there are some things that are up your alley, and they're open to hearing your proposal. If you would give us proposals on 3 different events that they wanted to do and what our idea was about it. And so we poured ourselves into doing that and creating PowerPoint slideshow
Hmm.
to present. And then we were back in Saudi Arabia. We were back in Riyadh. We were back in Jeddah and presenting ideas. We went to Aramco, the headquarters there. We were looking for funding. Miles was dealing with Coca-Cola and Apple to get funding for this 8-day sea festival that we were awarded. And we brought in 27 countries into Saudi Arabia. It was a big boom. Back then, it was a big deal because Saudi did not hire Americans to do events. We were
Hmm.
the first company, and it was fantastic, and we had the skill set to do it. But so I was very busy with that. Children in school, 2 daughters in school, boys elsewhere, and it was just constantly on the go. And the whole thing about the putting the event together, we just immediately poured ourselves into that because it was a very big deal. And it was from our journey, and it was for Prince Khalid, the man that had us to dinner after his Majlis.
Hmm.
And they found out what our credentials were and our background was, and it's extensive on an international level. And they said, well, show us what you would do. And they went for it. And so it was spending more time in Saudi and living there. But it was like Lawrence, it was like living in a tent. It was
Hmm.
out in the desert, out in the southernmost part of Asir, very close to the Yemen border, is where we did this 8-day, the Asir 8-day sea festival. And we brought in Formula 2000 boats, and each one intercontinental race, so each one was representing a country. And we brought in hot air balloons. Each one was representing a country, different groups. Balloons were from different countries. It was to show, to bridge a better understanding between the world and Saudi Arabia, and we were the conduit
Mm-hmm.
and for that to happen, and many, many lessons learned there. So it didn't stop until it stopped, until it was over. It was flying to Dubai all the time. And when I say that, it's a 13.5 hour flight
Mm-hmm.
flying from JFK to Dubai. And it was exotic. It was wonderful. We were able to fly business class on Emirates, and
Oh.
it was
Oh.
just, yeah, you know what I'm saying? One time
Uh,
they messed up my business class ticket, and they said, "Mr. Johns, the gal said, we simply don't have it in the system." She said, "But I see something here, but we can put you in coach." And I said, "Well, I paid for business, and it was a lot of money. Our company paid for it." And she said, "I do see that, but we don't have a seat for you." I said, "That doesn't make sense." And she said, "I know it doesn't, but what I'm going to do is I am going to upgrade you." And
no.
I was just waiting to hear it,
No.
to first class.
No way.
Flying first class on Emirates. And I said, "What does that ticket cost?" Well, she said, "Today, if you were trying to get it, it's 19,000 pa 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 pa. Today, if you were trying to get this seat, that's what the fee is. $19,000 to fly." But what do? They basically say, "Take off, you can change your clothes, change into this. We want you to be comfortable." "No, thank you." "Yes, thank you." "Do you need dry cleaning?" "Sure." "Do you need laundering?" "Yes,
Shower.
please." "Do you need a shower?" "This is your shower." It's like, wow.
That's once in a lifetime.
It was.
That's
And
that's for
it
sure.
was amazing. It really was amazing.
But was the story or the book already bubbling inside you? Like you had the idea to write it already, or was nothing that, or it or and you were too busy, or it was never an idea?
It was an idea, and what I was doing, especially after I had done the Sea Festival, and I do production. Miles was handling finances and things like that, so he wasn't always on the ground there. He was all over the world. I mean, he was in London, he was in France, uh, working deals out for support for this event. And it was after doing the Sea Festival, which was the last event and the amount of time that I spent in Saudi. Um, Miles was doing the outline to the book, very much like he did with A Line in the Sand, which is a different story. I mean, it's what we wrote. But back then in 2007 and 8, I did a lot of character sketches of people that I knew and would want to be in the book. And we didn't go that direction. We went
Mm-hmm.
after October 7th. It was a call to action. We need to do the book now. We
Oh,
need
that
to,
was the trigger.
that was the trigger.
Oh, interesting.
And we need
Interesting.
to join the narrative and just be absolutely factual to what happened in terms of characters, that sort of thing. It is a historical fiction. And we decided on it. We had to make that choice. And because we were dealing with similar concepts in the play. We've had 4 different writers in the play. So we were never far from the story of Lawrence and wanting that story to come out because we were working on a play. But in the case of the book, we decided in order to hook people, to bring them in, it must be entertaining. And we thought, let's make it a sleuthing story. It just evolved. And let's have a time travel device, kind of like, Raiders of the Lost Ark
Yeah.
and all the, and we want to write it in the style of, Alexander Dumas,
Mm-hmm.
things, and The Gentleman, and just create a story around an entertaining story around the actual history of the region.
Mm-hmm. You take, I don't know if it looks like we talked before the discussion, but you take all my questions away or all my ideas in the direction that I want to go, hey, which is fun, don't get me wrong, but I said it's worth mentioning because you kind of identified the idea that I'm going towards. During the reading or the listening of the story that I've done, by the way, great guy reading the story on Audible. I can only also recommend that. I realized it was a fiction during the reading process, and it was first when it was discussion about the time traveling machine. It was something that shocked me, and then I realized, oh, it's a fiction. It's a combined thing between reality and fiction. But
Yes.
how did you decide what to keep raw and what to hide behind fiction?
The hide behind fiction, which is a change from what was
Hide.
actually.
Hide.
Yes. That's it. It is the actual. We didn't take, an FJ truck and ride camels all the time. It was very much under the wire. We found a travel company that was willing to read Seven Pillars of Wisdom. David Weber, I just made contact with him just a couple of days ago. He's with his company that he created, travel company. And now remember, we're talking about the 2000s. His company started I think in 1999 or maybe 2001 or 2. We contacted him in 2005 when we wanted to do this trip. And again, it was a lead given to us because travel companies, and especially going to an area of conflict, you want to, what? You want to go into the air? What do you do? Why? What are you doing? You're risking your life. Well, he understood our mission to follow T.E. Lawrence's path. And so the travel company helped us to get there. And the book, the actual journey was more harrowing than the way we described it. We didn't get into the intensity of the Americans being in a foreign land and being looked at, and the nuance of getting inside the tent with the people. Not manipulation. It's like behavior and being real and being asked at one point, and my interpreter, this was later when I was doing the Sea Festival, saying, the mayor of the little Algathma wants to meet you. And you will go tonight. And we went, and it was to have a meal with this man in this concrete place with fluorescent lighting, tiny, and all these wizened Bedouin people sitting around talking, and I'm the guest sitting on the left, which was the place of, I guess I was told that's the place of honor next to the host, and getting, a great big huge platter full of rice and a goat that's been cooked sitting on top of it. Now, in this case, by this time I'd had at least a dozen meals like this. It's a formal meal. It's like Thanksgiving. You do it when it's special, and they do it because it takes a lot of time, and it's very good. It's like, great, we're gonna have turkey and and cranberries, and so on the head of this goat there were little pieces cut up that looked like little tubes and little 3/4 inch to an inch little pieces on top of the goat. And Ali was over on my right, and he says, he wants you to ask to eat that. Say la. No, don't eat that. I said, what is it? He said, goat intestine. I said, really? If I do it, is it a good thing? He said, if you do it, you get sick. But yeah, very good theme. Very impressive. It's just- so I get sick, but it's impressive. Yes, they do that to make you very special if you do that. And so I thought, I remembered in the movie Lawrence of Arabia, there was something that he ate, and he said, "Oh, it's very good. Would you like more?" And he says, "No," something like that. And so it came to it. It first started with, someone will pull a piece of meat off and toss it towards me, and it's like the best little piece of meat that's there. It's not just, it's like it's someone being serving you, and pick it up and eat it. And then the little slender man with all this, sort of brown, red beard and stuff. And he says, "Please have one." And he's pointing to the intestines. And all I'm thinking is intestines, intestines, intestines.
Would be
And
better not to know what it is.
They were like a little hose, but it was definitely had something in it. And so I did. I reached it and put it in, and I knew everyone would be watching. And it was the most horrible thing I've ever had in my mouth in my life. It was like lizard shit. It was just awful. It was, But Ali, Ali said that was a very good move later. Anyway.
What was the hardest part emotionally to write of the book?
The man that was drinking in the car, our driver, and when he said that he was sobbing, he started crying, he pulled over in the car. That's the story in the book. The actual story, again, is more intense. We put it in this driver that he had a bottle of Johnny Walker. Well, it was around a bottle of Johnny Walker, but it was a person close to me that was Saudi, and he was uncontrollable. He had picked up the Johnny Walker in Saudi, and that you lose a hand if you're found with that. I mean, it's like drugs. Drugs is death, but there's no drinking. But there is a black market, and this individual was very high in the Saudi because of his last name and the family name. Was recognized and respected, but he had access to a cachet. And to get a bottle of Johnny Walker Red back then was 400 riyals. So it was a lot of money. It was a lot of money to do it. So we put it together, and we had done it a couple times before, but he got back to the little place where we were in the middle of nowhere. And he doesn't know how to drink. He guzzled and then started falling apart. And he said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And he was slobbering. I said, Ali, what is it? And that's the man's name, Ali, in a real case. And he said, 2 terrorists from my village, went into North Tower. And he's just uncontrollable. And he's wailing. And then the other guy that I was with, great guy, Mark Locke, was just, Ali, hey, man, and he's British. Hey, man, what's going on? What's up? What's up, bro? What's up, man? What's up? And he said, and he just said, I'm so sorry. I not tell you, I'd known him for a while, and he hadn't said anything. But the dam cracked, and I just said, Ali, it wasn't you. He said, and that's why I got so mad at you for driving into town alone. They take you, and he's crying. They take you. And I'm thinking, Jamie, our risk assessment guy, Kidnap and Ransom stuff. He said, you cannot go without me anywhere. You must be with me. They know me. No one touch you. But you go alone. They're very bad people. They grab you. And then it turned out that the two terrorists, and we found this out I found it out writing the book. I said, Miles, how many terrorists were there? There were 19, right? Yeah, 19. But they all weren't from, no, look, I am going to find out exactly what country everyone was from, what tower they went into, so that we know as we're writing the book,
Mm-hmm.
And then I see the last name of two guys that are from this village that Ali's from. And it's like, oh my, were they his brothers? Cousin? And he said in his sobbing and his crying that night in the room, they are part of a different kind of religion. They got pulled in. They became terrorists. Clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the story in the book is a driver, and he pulls it out from underneath the dash. And my intention in that little blurb is to get out of the car. It just made me sick to my stomach. And we weren't at our destination, and the sun was just coming up, and it's like, I don't want to be in this car. I didn't know the man, but in Ali's case, I was consoling him, saying, Ali, it was not you. You're a good man. And he's holding on to me. It's like, from a chair. I'm not standing up and hugging. He's just like begging for forgiveness.
That's intense, man. That's really intense. And it's more intense than in the book. You're right. It's just crazy. The book is, as I said, I will link in the show notes description. But I realized that the book it's not only the story, it's also a history of the places. This was at least my feeling as I read the book, and it connects somehow the past to what we are seeing or still seeing today. Did the journey somehow help you understand what is not written in the history book, and maybe why not?
Well, I know from living here, and especially where I live now in New Mexico, that the Native American history still isn't clear and presented from their point of view. Indians, cowboys and Indians, the movies were made on that, and stars were made on that, and they were misrepresented. There's a show that's called Dark Winds, and it's about the Diné tribe. And it's authentic, and it's going into its fourth season because it is so real and good. They're learning about people is what it's all about. And as far as writing the book, the discovery that Moses and Abraham and the prophets in the King James Version Bible, we're not the sole owners as Christians of those prophets. And I didn't know that. And it's in the book until we were in Maghar al-Sharif, and our driver, in very broken English, is trying to explain that Abraham lived there. But he's going, Abraham, Musa, and blah, 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 blah. And I go, whoa, what did you say Moses? Iowa. Abraham lived there. And I'm going to look over there, and it's all sand, and there's a couple of structures out in the valley. 10 years, he say. And I'm going, wait a minute, that sounds familiar because I know the Bible. It's there. We're standing in the area. So it's coming away with touching the past, which is touching the present, and recognizing that history repeating, like we were saying earlier, mankind's, man against man, man against nature, man against God, and these battles that were man against, with the religion and stuff. And like we say in the book, do unto others as others would do unto you. We find that's in all the religions. Well, where the heck is it being followed? And where does righteous indignation stop? Wait a minute. I believe in God. I believe in my country. I believe in this land is mine. I believe in my family. I love my children. I make my money. I provide. Who are you to tell me to move? Who are you to tell me my religion is bad? And you have October 7th, where the hatred is blinded. It's making a statement as horrific as possible. What more can be done to the crimes of the heart, the crimes of the head, not just to another person? I mean, it's just, when does this stop? And it's recognizing that it is going on, and it's not being shocked by it. It's sad. There's grief. There's just, the closer you are to it. Here in the United States, we had a fire rip through a portion of, outside of Los Angeles along the coast. And in 36 hours, poof, and a few people died. And you look at Ukraine, you look at Gaza, which is where the focus of the attacks are, right or wrong, they're still attacks. And the desolation, but it's not just, the burning of the buildings and the scorching of the earth like we had in California, which is awful. My son was on the fire there. He's an LA County fireman. He was fighting that fire for 36 hours straight. And what does he say? He said it was nuts, and he leaves it at that. Mm-hmm. These other places in the world, like you were talking about, they're people, babies, children. What is sacred? No. I have a sense of that I hold sacred, that I won't do, and I work to not think, what do we hold dear? Our opinion? Mm. And so... Our beliefs, opinions, schminions. Everyone's got one, But storytelling like we're doing now, maybe the listeners will relate to a piece of this, but it's in storytelling that we discover our empathy, because we listen autobiographically. We listen back, we listen like, oh, I relate to that because it's similar to me. And it doesn't matter what color you are, or what you're wearing on your head or your body, or the food we're eating. We're talking about our soul. When we tell stories, oftentimes there's no disputing. It's their story. I'm talking about one-on-one, sitting down, breaking bread, not booze. I'm not saying, if people do it that way, that's fine. But really just having conversation that's open.
Correct.
And so these are some of the lessons, and I didn't know I would get all these things at all going into it.
What legacy do you hope that the book leaves behind, Ted?
I've never really thought of that. We wrote it with an intention that to be a primer for most people, and it has been with the readers. They respond to the history, to understand a culture, to understand a place. You gotta know the history. So as people getting outside themselves and the churn that they're involved in, that churn of social media and being on top. And I don't like that. And I like that, but I don't like that. And it's like a big vat with a paddle that's churning the bread. And we're the bread, and we're all like, it's just like getting. It means nothing.
Zero.
It's the top part of the iceberg. Let's go below. And that's where Miles and I, with that book and the next book, Havana Familia, we're looking at Cuba as the, mistreated mistress, the mistress of Spain, the mistress of the United States, the mistress of Russia, Cuba, this little place because of where it's located, but it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And how people mistreat and how it's being mistreated now, by their own people. Or it's not being allowed to flourish. Meeting a guy there in Cuba, I said, what is it about the country? He said, there's two challenges of what I want to do. And he said, and to be allowed to do it. To be allowed. Because if I point out anything, it seems that I'm pointing out something. If I point out that chair is broken, I can fix it. They don't want to hear that in communism. The chair is not broken. It's not.
Coming from a communist country, which is close to Russia, I know exactly what you mean. Exactly. You just look away, and when you look away, it's not there, and then if it's not there, then there's not a problem. And I think as much as we try to tell the history in documentaries and history books, I think you find a way, you find an captivating way to tell the history through fiction. And I think it makes it more interesting for people because the storytelling, it's captivating, and with that you are getting inside the pieces of history here and there. And I haven't seen it done until now, because until now it's either you read fiction, either you read history books like documentation and so on, and they are usually, if you're not really interested in the topic, like in Middle East in your case, the books are boring for someone who's not 100. No, let me finish. I try to make a point. The books are boring because if they are only history, not everyone is interested in history. Not everyone has the patience to read history. Not everyone has the attention span to read history. I don't know if you're aware of Romanian history, but we have a major event in 1989 together with the fall of the Soviet Union was a revolution which happened in Romania, and it's now 35 years ago, and nobody actually know what happened. And there are a lot of books written by different guys that did investigation there, and they are purely history book. They are incredible, nice, but nobody has the attention span. And everyone that I'm talking to and ask, have you read that book? No, it's boring. Yeah, of course, because but if you find a way to tell it with fiction inside it and make the storytelling inside and make it a big part of fiction, which makes it captivating, and then you put inside some interesting captions of history that makes the book captivating. And this is what I think you managed to do, and this could be the solution for telling the history and maybe avoiding this constant repetition of history that is happening in the last years. I had a long rant,
so
and I'm
people
sorry for
listen.
that.
Not at all. No, it's so that people will listen. Well, where it can get inside and not just be a fleeting, image.
Exactly.
And so that's what we have. And so we're doing the same thing with Havana Familia. The next book is to continuing with Magnus and Finn, and when we're in certain areas, we take a time travel device like we did in A Line in the Sand and catapult ourselves back in time to specific, critical moments in history.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's accurate.
That's as I said, that's extremely interesting. I hope it will have the same success as but it will be successful because it's important for people to know the history. We have to know
Yeah,
our history in order not to have it repeat itself again around us.
true.
Um, is there one message that you want to leave to the next generation of storytellers or adventurers like you? I think you are I want to give a bit of context to this question.
Mm,
It's the second episode, the second talk that we have together, and I'm
mm,
impressed by you. I'm impressed by what you have done. I'm impressed by how you live your life, by how you lived your life, and that you constantly want to do something, and that's something which is missing. Like you said, we go through social media, we go through clicks, to likes, dislikes, we get angry, but we don't have this drive that you have. And I would ask you if you have a message for a new generation, or for the next generation that see you and think, I might like that way of living.
mm. Well, it takes a lot of trust in a higher power that is guiding. Because when I think I mentioned it in the first episode, getting tapped on the shoulder to do something, and I've been tapped many times to do things, really came from an early lesson my mother said when I wanted to run away. I was 15 years old. I wanted to leave and saying, I do not like this place. I like the place, but there's so much more. And, this is 5 towns, Mom. My graduating class, I did end up staying, was 31 people, very rural. And I had just come from a camp in Great Falls, Montana, many thousands of miles away, and was with international people my age. And so my head was just open. And she said, what do you mean? I want to run away. You have no business setting 1 foot forward until you learn to deal with where you are right now. Stop commenting about everything around you. I don't like this. I don't like that. I think it's better over there. See the beauty of where you are in the moment, even with the challenges. And you've got a few, young man. And see them through like this. Read a book. I said, I do not want to read a book. She said, read Call of the Wild. I do not want to read Jack London's Call of the Wild. I want to go there, Mom. That's where my head is. I want to go there. And she just says, you will. Adapt to where you are. Fully engage. See what's around you, because there's so much. And she was right. And so that's what I've done. It's like I just felt that wherever I was and what was necessary is one, that if man had done it before, I could figure it out myself, and trusted that I would. And I've just been given opportunities to do that. So curiosity, adapting, and trust in your own thought. We get a lot of input from social media about what we're supposed to be and do that. I did a lot of television commercials. I know about manipulation of buy this, buy that. It was fun as an actor, but the overall, concept of it is pretty powerful because it shapes nations. And just be clear on where you are, and control. You have control of one thing, and that is your thinking. And you have choice, but you cannot control another person, So watch your thinking and take action. Don't sit, just move. Don't sit. Enough. It's like, yeah.
I know. I
have
cannot
children.
get enough.
I have grandchildren.
I look. I'm sorry that I haven't met you earlier in my life, because you're an impressive person, and I think you everyone who's younger could. not saying I'm old, I'm not saying you're
Mhm.
old, but everyone who's
Mhm.
at a fresh age, I think they can get a lesson from here, and they can see that
Good.
at the end you can do pretty much what you want. It's depending on the trust levels that you have, and I think that's the most important message that we can have for everyone.
Mhm. And it's not over. It's just, even for me, it's not
Exactly.
over.
Exactly.
And the desire to learn more, to be open to it. When I meet an older guy my age and I say, so what are you a beginner at? And they're like, what? I
Yeah.
said, what are you a beginner at that you're really enjoying, but you don't, and people think, and they go, oh, take up a language, try this, do something, be engaged. And,
Yeah.
I wish you the very best, Paul. I truly do. And I have an understanding of the travels that you've done and the most recent change of thought, or it's not change, it's your evolving thought is wonderful. Very, very best to you and your wife and your boy.
Thank you so much, Ted, and thank you for your time. Thank you for the nice words. Thanks for telling the story. As I said, I listen, and I think you noticed and whomever is a watcher of this podcast, I know that I'm a talker, but not in these 2 episodes. No,
Oh
I
man, I'm
I
sorry.
was no, you don't have
I
to say sorry. I'm genuinely listening, and I'm genuinely curious about your story, and I think your story is amazing. You're an amazing human being, and I hope there are more like you in the future, because we need the adventure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Very kind, very kind.
Hope we can do this
Very
again someday.
like Paul, let's just stay in touch. We'll be in touch. We will.
Absolutely.
This
Talk to
is
you soon,
great.
Ted. Bye.
Thank you, Paul. Bye.